hand it over to John.
Thanks, John. So this is the part of the session where John makes sure that the IBM lawyers aren't in the room, because I'm actually going to pull back the covers a little bit, probably more than you've heard so far here at Connect. So as I said, I work for PSC Group, and one of the things that makes us different than a lot of the partners here is, well, I have 22 professionals who work in the Notes Domino field. We're a company of 100, right? So you do the math. I have almost 80 people doing other technologies. SharePoint, .NET, Oracle, Salesforce.com, Python, PHP, mobile development, right? We do the whole breadth of areas, and we're partners with multiple firms. And one of the things that lets us do is talk from a real impartial standpoint why XPages or other technologies matter. So really what this is it's our real world experiences, and I call this the impact of the consumer economy on the business and enterprise application space. So here we are in 2013, and let's look at where we are, kind of the state of the application. So we're at a crossroad, right? Email has become a commodity. I know you might hear that, right? Notes Domino, we talked about what new features are in the mail platform, but it really has gotten to, nobody's really doing a feature head-to-head anymore. Whether you're using Domino or Exchange or Google, it's email. Everybody has to have it, right? And it's cloud, on-premises, hybrid. We've split everything apart. So what we want to do is we want to focus on the applications. So I want to do a real quick poll here. How many people have a smartphone with them? Raise your hand. Okay. How many people have a tablet with them right now? Okay. How many people in this room have a laptop? Okay. No, in with the room with them. Not, right. A couple of you. Right? The reality is this is the first time all week I've taken my laptop out of the hotel room. Right? What have I carried around all week? These. Where do I want my applications? I want them here. It's no longer about being tied to a laptop. I need those applications where I am on the devices I'm using. And for the first time ever in December, tablets now outship laptops. Think about that. Right? 3 years ago, the iPad didn't exist. And now they're outshipping the hardware. So the burning question is, what do we do with these applications? So let's do a little journey here. Right? This is what your users are using at home. This is Gmail. Right? They're using Facebook. They're probably using it on their smartphone. This is Twitter. This is what Twitter looks like for me. Right? Your more advanced users are using things like Hootsuite. This is NetSuite, an application platform. They may be using this. They may be using Salesforce, right? And inside our enterprises, we still ask people to use this, right? Or we ask them to use this. Who remembers the ugly VB6 days? Ugh. But guess what? How is this any better? Right? Okay, it's a discussion database. How is this any better? This is a line of business application running a business that's $75 million in the Midwest of the United States. How is this any better than this? Right? This screenshot is 10 years old. That one's 11. Our users, they won't take it. Right? So I know what everybody's thinking. Your users aren't like this. They're going to use the apps you tell them. They're going to do all their business on approved tools. That's not reality. More than 50% of all business users bypass internal applications for public tools. The number one right now is Gmail, and the number two is Dropbox. Right? I know a company, one of the largest professional services firms in the world, and Dropbox has more of their documents than their internal applications. Think about that. Also think about the fact that Dropbox was hacked 7 times in December. Why are they bypassing these internal tools? They're slow. They're restrictive, right? They're not accessible at home. They're not on my mobile device. And the number one reason, polled by Gartner, quote, they're not sexy. Right? So we all think about, sex appeal is only in our home. Your users want to use something, an experience that they like. So they're expecting modern applications. They want these modern Web 2.0, and I hate using the word Web 2.0, but it's the best phrase to use. They want those experiences at work. If you don't provide them, they will bypass it and go get their own. Right? As corporate IT professionals, we have to modernize or become irrelevant. So how modern are your applications? So my experience, and those of our consultants, is that once a business application is put into use, and I mean line of business application, workflow, the things we do in notes, it's rarely updated, right? The more line of business it is, the less care it's given. Many of our clients, right, companies have been using these apps since the late 90s, early 2000s with 0 changes. Think about that, right? How many times since 1996 have you gotten a new computer? Why are we not treating our applications the same way? So then the question I ask is, have you done an internal audit? When you're thinking about application modernization or application migration, the first thing you need to do is an audit. So what we do is we do an audit, and this is kind of the rough, we categorize every application 3-way, or one of 3 buckets, and this is the rough average, right? So the first bucket is documents and discussions. Right? 40% of total apps built out there are basically discussion databases or document libraries. And this is platform agnostic. Right? They're based off templates that come with the product. Right? And what should we do with that? Well, why not use connections? Why not use a corporate version of Dropbox or another tool? Right? There's no reason why you can't go get the new templates from OpenNTF, update those, but look at what your options are. Right? This is where there's lots of out-of-the-box products that you can actually get for free. Smart Cloud Engage. I can sign up as an individual user and get something there. The second space is enterprise applications. This is 25% of total apps. Right? This is highly transactional, huge volumes of data. I don't know how many of you have seen, right, when you walk in and you see an application, right, and there's 10 databases and each one is like 50 gigabytes, right? I love Domino. Domino's not meant to do that, right? Domino's not meant to do financial transactions on a millisecond basis. There's lots of platforms that do this, right? And whether it's .NET or Java or something else, right, we can move those. And then we hit this business application space. This is the space, mission critical, organizational unique, heavy use of workflow and security. And this is the sweet spot for XPages, right? So if you're looking in your organization, where should I do my first XPages app? Or how do I prove XPages can be successful? You want to use that bucket. The other 2, they work, but you're going to be competing with other things. No platform on the planet can compete with XPages in that line of business bucket. So let's talk a couple reasons why. So, as I've been here 18 years, I've heard many people, including John, on this stage, saying, write once, run multiple places, right? We all kind of chuckled. The reality is XPages, that is true, right? Works in a Notes client, works in a browser, works mobile, and it's the only modern web application platform, right? Notice I didn't call it a Notes platform, a modern web application platform that will run disconnected. It's the only one that does that, right? User can decide how they want to work, where they want to work. We can do corporate branding very easily. We can use source code control. I don't know how many of you who write code. I don't write much anymore, right? But every once in a while, they let me go look at things. The fact I can use an SVN server with XPages is probably one of the greatest things. And as somebody who has consultants, I no longer have to hear that, I lost my code last night. SVN's one of the things. And it is the most rapid updates of a development tool ever through the extension library. Right? The extension library in 24 months had almost a release every 2 weeks. Show me another corporate development platform or enterprise platform that's done that. It doesn't exist. Performance. So, right, we have the Notes client. I have some numbers here. These are, again, samples from a server in Chicago to my home in downtown Chicago. But let's look at them, and they represent. So we have a Notes application. I'm opening it through a server on VPN takes 30 to 60 seconds, right? So this had 1 million documents. It was about 1 gigabyte, had about 10 views, right? A traditional application. And then opening a replica locally took about 20 seconds because the view index had to rebuild. We took the same application and just gave it an XPages UI look at the difference in numbers. Opening on a server through the VPN, 6 to 10 seconds. Opening in a replica, 3 to 5 seconds. Opening it in a browser, I could barely time it. Okay. Your users want fast, they want performance. XPages is one of the best ways to go. It's developer friendly. Now, I know there's some of you who are probably Notes developers in the room and have tried to write XPages, and you're looking at me like I'm crazy. So when I want to preface this by saying it's web developer friendly. If you want to be an XPages developer, you need to know how to write HTML, Java, JavaScript, and CSS. If you have those skill sets, moving to the XPages world is a really good transition. But what we have found is I can take a web developer who's worked on Python or PHP, and I can make it an XPages developer in 2 weeks. Right? And then this new space of hiring millennials, one of the reasons I stopped writing code is hiring 22, 23-year-old IT professionals and watching them write code. I felt old for the first time in my life. Right? In a week of training, they were writing production level code. So for those of us who have been in this community for a long time, that may be important. For IT managers, CIOs, that is drastically important because those are the resources they can get. So let's talk about our methodology. So the first thing we do is an application audit, and we categorize those applications like I talked about. We then determine the path for each application. Right? Are we modernizing? Are we moving? Are we replatforming? Are we sunsetting? We do an XPages discovery. We pick one application, line of business with heavy use, and we get it out there. And then we enable a development team. Right? We did this 22 times last year. So what I want to do is talk about some real-world examples. Everything I'm going to show you are applications in production. The only thing I've done is scrubbed company logos, only because I had to. So let's look at it first. This is a Notes client application, right? It's basically a document library. You can see it's a frame set, right? It's got some views. It's not pink or green, so we know it wasn't made right in Notes 2, Notes 3, right? Somewhere between 5 and 6 is when the application was built. And out of the box, in 8 hours, they built this, right? This is the very first version of XPages. It's One UI 1.0, right? You can see we have the view in the middle. We have the views listed on the side, right? Very simple, proof of concept. The customer did not believe this was Notes. Right? Let's look at the next one. We all know what this is, right? This is a document library. It's got, you can see some custom views. It's got some custom fields. It's got some attachments in there. And in a week, we built this. Right now, this isn't using One UI out of the box. Does anybody who hasn't been in the session know what theme this is based on? This is SharePoint 2007. The CSS, copy and pasted, because this runs inside SharePoint as a web part. The end user never knows when they're in SharePoint they're actually touching a Domino application. Right? All we did was enable this application with a look and feel that matched and a little custom menus. But imagine the fact that we went to a CIO and said, your Domino application now runs in your SharePoint environment. Now, how many people have seen Excel running a business? It's kind of scary, isn't it? What's really scary is they're using like Excel 95, right? It's not even modern, right? This is a client we had. This is how they ran their business. Their business was a $50 million a year transportation company. And in 6 weeks, we built this. Imagine the impact of going from that to that in 6 weeks. Right. You can see basic home page. We even put a calculator widget we stole from Dojo, put it on there. The users are like, wow, I get to have a calculator on my web page. Forget the fact that they can go to the start bar and turn on a calculator. So we're going to get a little more complicated here. So if any of you went to my colleague's session, Lessons Learned from the World's Largest XPages project, this is actually the UI for that project. Okay. Why this slide is important, I want to show it is, the number one thing we did on this project is we hired a UI designer. Right? We went through UI testing, usability testing, colors. Right? XPages is not notes, it's web. We have to treat it like a web application. This application, when we showed it to their users, they loved it. This is a company that wanted to throw notes out, right? 100,000 users, 100 countries. This application runs their business. That's another view of it, right? But we did accessibility testing, all of those things that you have to do. It's, does that look like notes to anybody? Here's another application where we took a notes app and we built an intranet in XPages. Does that look like notes to you guys? Right? That's what we can do with XPages. We can break the mold of the old notes frame set. Here's another look at it. And then this is the one that I really want to get the point across, is how many people have heard or gone to a session on business analytics this week? Right? To me, one of the most important things happening in 2013 is the ability to take analytics on our data and present it to the executives in our company. This is an XPages application using Dojo charts. All of this data is from a notes view. There's no analytics application in there, as much as John wants me to talk about products in the IBM software pipeline, right? Metrics. This is the stuff we can do, right? Mark Roden, who works at PSC, he built a prototype of this in 4 hours, right? Drag and drop, wire up some data, added more. So I showed this before. Right? This is that application I told you. It's 11 years old. A construction company, they actually manage construction sites. So when a hotel like this is built, there's usually 30 or 40 companies. And their job is to manage all of those companies. This runs their business. And we built them this. What's great about this story is that this application has been so successful, they enabled it to their customers. And GE gave them a $100 million contract to build 7 sites, solely based on this application. Right? This is where we want to go with XPages. Right? We're not building frame sets anymore. We're building whatever we want. The fact that data is in a notes view really doesn't matter anymore.
And technology aside, John, one of the key things we're all learning at this conference is social business is really about people connecting with people and connecting with emotion, right? The reality is we just saw a bunch of before and afters, and there's an emotional response to each of them. John articulated, users standing up and applauding, users loving these applications. That's what gets you in. That's why modernization is so effective, is because it's all about the end user and all about their desire to work in the tool of choice. You're making this the tool of choice by appealing to that emotional draw.
So let me tell you a story. If you notice there's no name or screenshots on here, I apologize, but I think it's a really good story. So, unfortunately, like most of you, we have clients that have left the IBM platform. We have a large law firm in Chicago that in 2007 completely left IBM, right? Not just notes. DB2, Portal, AS400, all left the door. Global law firm. They still had, though, this Domino server in a closet. Right? They called it a note server. Right? They didn't know what it was. And it ran one of their businesses. It actually managed client applications. They came to us and they said, we have to do something with this. Let's migrate it to SharePoint. So we're going to talk about some numbers here. But to migrate this application to SharePoint was about $1 million. Right? To do the XPages version was less than $100,000. But they're not licensed anymore, right? So as a partner, I legally can't work on this application. So what did we do? We got them to purchase a net new license of IBM XWorks Server. It's $1,000, right? 4 NSFs, $1,000. never use the word Lotus or Notes once. It's an IBM XWork server. It's IBM XPages. They're now running this application and looking at doing more XPages application development in an environment where they have 100 SharePoint developers in-house. Right? So I don't feel like we lied by not saying Lotus or Notes, right? But we focused on the app. We didn't get into the yellow, fight that a lot of us sometimes like to get into, and we created a success story. Right? This application is now used by 1,000 users worldwide. Right? This is what XPages has enabled us to do. So now let me do a head-to-head comparison. So when you're thinking about this, I want you to remember, right? So I got 22 guys who do XPages. I have 40 people who do SharePoint. You can imagine what the holiday parties are like, right? They get in a room. We actually had a party with bowling, and there were people competing to see which team was better. But that's going to be important when we talk about this story. So in 2010, IBM brought us in to a customer in Chicago to review a notes application and compare modernizing the application with XPages and SharePoint. And what I'm going to show you is the process and the result. Right, so we took this notes application, we cataloged it, we created an XPages application, we created a theme, we built a mobile interface, and then I had a SharePoint to do the exact same thing. Totally separate. They both started with the same app, and they didn't work at all. They were completely independent until the end. So this is what the Notes app looks like. Right? For those of you who have built apps in 4 and 5, this looks familiar. Right? I have a standard frame set. I have a bunch of views, a categorized view. You can see the document there. Had some buttons, some date fields, and some attachments. When we get down to it, this is what it was. Had 1 form, 4 dialogues, 5 system forms, 30 views, 17 system views, right? 20 agents and 2 script libraries for workflow and logic, and an export to Excel for reporting, and it had UI. So this sounds like an application probably many of you have today, right? And we built them this. If you notice, we used the SharePoint theme only because we wanted to go head-to-head completely. We brought a custom jQuery menu in, and then everything was then out-of-the-box XPages. We built them very quickly a mobile UI using the OpenNTF mobile controls and tested it on the iPhone. Right? So we created that XPages interface. We created a custom theme with branding and color scheme. Only interface changes, right? Home page, document, workflow form. We didn't change any of the Lotus script at all. We just called the Lotus script through XPages, and we used some assets from OpenNTF. It took us 104 hours. So you can see I have some mobile controls where custom controls that can be reused, the custom theme can be reused, but this is 104 hours. So let's do some comparison. So, right, the same Notes app, we document the tasks to make a feature comparable version. We're going to use SharePoint best practices, created the site, created the form, created the web parts, all of the different things for SharePoint. We used a third-party tool to move the data across so that there was data in the existing app. And then we had to create an iPhone extension on top of the SharePoint mobile extensions. Head-to-head, 188 hours. So let me get to the next step. So there's some details here about things that we did, Active Directory. I wanted to document our process, but this is what most people care about, right? 108 versus 188. And there's no offline in the SharePoint version. Right? So now, don't get me wrong. I, as a business person, do a lot of SharePoint development. If you're talking about an existing Notes application, it will always be more expensive to go from Notes to SharePoint than Notes to XPages. It is roughly 2 to 1. Right? So now the question that everybody asks me usually, and John chuckles on, is what if I'm doing new development from scratch? Right? The numbers get closer, but if you want offline or if you want mobile, XPages is faster. Even SharePoint 2013, right, the numbers might change a little bit, but not much. SharePoint 2013 still doesn't have the mobile capabilities built in the box that XPages does. So Let's think about it. We're in 2013. Your users are demanding modern applications in the workplace. Smartphones and tablets, they're going to force you to change platforms and techniques. XPages is ready to build real-world applications, right? So 2 years ago, we were on stage talking again, what's ready? I have an application, 100,000 users, 150 Domino servers worldwide, running in production for 6 months. It works, it's ready, it's enterprise ready. Right? And you don't have to migrate to get modern and mobile. That's what XPages is for. So the last slide I'm going to leave you for is what we're doing in our world is something called application modernization. And if anybody is interested, I have some more info that I can talk about it. But it's the idea of modernizing applications from a technology agnostic view. And we call it our Application Modernization Center. So let me leave you with this. Your users will work with applications that will match the experience they have at home. You get to decide if they're going to use your apps or ones they can get for free.